You know, this group hasn't really been getting along so well lately. I think the perfect thing to set things right is a big pot of stew. And I think the most important ingredient in any stew has to be potatoes. And you can't go wrong with a little extra potato. But it's kind of bland. It seems like something's missing. I know what it needs. More potatoes! I just want to remind everyone before I get started with the review that I do have a Patreon now, and I know a lot of you are already members of the Patreon, but if you're not and you just kind of want to check it out, see what's going on over there, well, there is a link in the video description. I think the perfect way to start off this review is by doing something I haven't done before, and that's reading one of the comments on the reaction video, because I think it really did a better job of explaining what the theme or the thesis is of this episode better than I could. And it comes from somebody who has to be a Chainsaw Man fan because their username is Dingy and Pochita. I asked their permission to use this excerpt here, so I'm not trying to dox anybody. But it says, Bruce, when I tell you tears in my eyes during that cold opening, Isayama brought every single point of view and perspective of the millions of people that watch this show into one single circle, which is literally every episode. His themes and message stands very clear to the audience. Marco's last words, "We haven't even talked this through." Well, that resonates so much into our world and society, not to mention what's currently happening right now. Communication is key to a successful relationship, and we as humans fail this because we just assume directly rather than talk. And Dingy and Pochita, you nailed it here. Like, that is what this episode is about. And this episode really feels like it is the declaration of what Attack on Titan is about. And of course it's complex. It's got complicated themes. It's got multiple themes. But this really seems to show me, in your comments, you seem to make it clear to me just how much Isayama was frustrated with human nature, particularly when we deal with human nature on like a national scale, on a cultural scale, on an international scale, and how frustrating it is that a lack of communication, that people don't talk things through, they go straight to the or else before what should come before the or else. You know, it's like we are an international global group of people who just go directly to or else. Like, or else is all we seem to get these days. And Isayama says, you know what? Let's make some potato stew. Let's make a lot of potato stew. Let's talk this out. We may need a little skirmish here or there to clear the air, but it doesn't have to be fatal. It doesn't have to be genocide, and there is a way to get over, like, past insults and past injuries and not worry so much about the mistakes in the past, because we've all got those mistakes in the past. How about we come together, we move forward, there are real existential threats to humanity, let's worry about those instead of trying to be the one to kill the other guy first. But the episode does open up with a little daydreaming from Jean, and you know, Jean is daydreaming about having a family, having a wife and a new child, and we kind of see that baby first. And I didn't quite catch on to it right away, but then I started thinking about it, and some people mentioned it in the comments, but Jean has always had a crush on Mikasa. And, you know, they hide her eyes, the hair's a little bit different. I don't know that I've ever gotten a real good look at Mikasa's ears before, and we get a great look at the ear on this lady. But I think that is his, like, idealized version of what Mikasa would be like as his wife. Although I don't know if Mikasa's up for that, you know, I don't know what she thinks of Jean necessarily. I also don't know if she would be, like, the real housewife type. Like, she's a woman of action. So I think this is a fantasy of Jean's in more way than one, perhaps. But I do like that the baby and Mikasa, they have like identical ears. So at least the baby didn't inherit I don't like to say it for baby. It looks like a girl to me. She didn't inherit her father's ears. And then, you know, even things beyond that with grandkids and great-grandkids and all that Jean has to do, in his opinion, to kind of make this fantasy come true. Well, all he has to do is nothing. Like, isn't that the easiest thing to do? Nothing? Well, we'll find out it's not the easiest thing to do when you have friends, when you have strong feelings, when you aren't the kind of person who can just stand by and do nothing. But Jean, you know, I'm not sure that Mikasa is down for his fantasy, but he potentially has a really nice life ahead if he just sits back and lets the rumbling happen, lets the genocide happen, or at least he thinks he does. I would argue that once you go down that road of wiping out entire swaths of people, you keep finding more people to wipe out. So eventually, maybe they would come for you, Jean. I don't know that I would trust Flock with my future. But all he has to do in that moment, in his own opinion, is nothing, and all his dreams come true. And yet, Jean has become the person who does not do nothing. He is a leader of sorts, and he is noble. He is not the guy that just wanted to finish at the top of the class to have an easy life as an MP in the Central District anymore. I like that. We're going to get to visit with Jean a lot in this episode. Now, a really nice effect in this episode. You know, Hanji is making the stew, and people are sitting around the fire. And as they sit around the fire, tempers flare. The tension grows. And as the tension grows, I hear there's this like noise in the background. And I'm not entirely sure what that noise is, but the noise becomes more intense and more intense, this ambient noise that at first you almost don't even hear it. And as tempers flare and tempers run hotter and hotter, this noise gets higher. And then I see what we're hearing is the stew pot boiling. And as tempers flare, the stew pot boils faster. And the heat in the stew is going up as the heat in the conversation is going up. Beautiful touch by the director, beautiful touch by the animators, the sound design. I love how the increasing heat of the stew mirrors the increasing heat of the interpersonal situations as they're sitting around that fire. A wonderful artistic touch. Hats off to that. But really what's happening as that pot boils is assignment of blame, which at this point I think we can all agree that it's pointless to be assigning blame here because what has happened has happened. Like, it's too late to change the past. So who cares who did what? You guys have one pathway that's not even an easy pathway, but one possible pathway to fixing things, and that is working together on the same task and not sitting around deciding who's to blame for where we are. And the stew pot's boiling, and Jean's pointing blame, other people are pointing blame, everyone is pointing blame at each other. Such a pointless exercise. It accomplishes nothing, but they got to get that heat out. You can't eat the stew until it's properly cooked. So for this team to come together, they have to be properly cooked. They've got to boil. They've got to let it cool back down. Then they come forward. Instead of a bunch of separate ingredients, they're one well-boiled stew, forged in fire, if you will. But Annie raises a really good point. Now, assigning blame is kind of pointless, but Annie says something that I kind of think is very potentially correct. And she asks a question that needed to be asked because she asks Mikasa, Armin, Connie, Jean, the people from Paradis, if they can kill Eren when it comes to it. And, you know, she's asking them all, but she's really asking Mikasa, right? Like, Mikasa, can you kill Eren if that's what it comes to? And Armin jumps in and says, not if we can talk to him. Like, plan A is not kill Eren. Plan A is to stop the rumbling, not to kill Eren. But Annie points out something that I would absolutely believe if I were in Annie's situation. She says this is inevitably going to come down to a battle where it is Mikasa and Armin and Connie and Jean fighting against Annie and Reiner and Magath and Peak, because they are going to be fighting against the people from Marley, the people from Liberio who want to kill Eren. They're going to be fighting to protect Eren. That's how she sees this coming down. That it's going to end up being a fight of essentially Liberio / Marley versus Paradis. And I think she's very real in those concerns. And she asks this question, and I think she gets the answer she already knew, is they don't say, yes, we can kill Eren if it comes to it. They keep talking about how they want to try to find a way not to kill Eren. So Annie is very prescient here. At least I feel like she is. I want to see how this part plays out, how this conflict plays out. And while we're having that tense standoff between Annie and Mikasa, I really thought we were going to finally get to see Annie versus Mikasa. And this would technically be Annie versus Mikasa round 2, but we never got to see round 1. We don't know how that turned out. We don't know who won, but we see Mikasa with her scout blades sort of halfway out of their sheaths or unsheathed all the way. We see Annie, she's got that barb on her ring, ready to go female Titan. And oh my goodness, I thought we were going to see female Titan Annie versus Mikasa with her ODM gear in full effect. I gotta tell you, I'm not a gambler, I'm not taking bets, I'm not placing bets. But if I were, my money's on Mikasa. Of course it's on Mikasa. And I talked about the aesthetic of the stew boiling as tensions rise. Well, there's another artistic decision that was made in this episode that I just really found interesting. Did I love it? I don't know, but I'm thinking about it and I don't hate it. Sometimes it's thought stimulating, can be even better than something you just immediately love. but so many things are framed off-center and eccentric or asymmetric. And it's kind of telling us that everybody is on a side when what they really need to do is be center frame. They need to be in the middle, but nobody is. And we'll get like close-ups of a face, which traditionally I would expect a close-up to be framed mid-frame, central. I try to set my shots up like that sometimes, but they're all off to one side or off to the other side. We see Gabby like that. We also see Jean like that. We see Annie like that. And they even show the stew pot in the fire. And you'll notice, like when I sit around campfires or bonfires when I would go camping, or we have a bonfire in the fall in the backyard and my friends come over, we kind of sit around the fire with the fire in the center. But it's off center. You see the fire is on one end and the circle goes around. I'll talk more about those seating arrangements in a bit, but that's also off center. And it's showing us that we need to move everybody to the middle if they're going to work together. You can't work on one side of the frame or the other. People are never mid-frame and dead center, but that's where they need to be to make this work. And a key part of the plan is this helicopter. I call it a helicopter, the skyboat. I like calling it a helicopter because the way it looked under the tarp. I had forgotten about that vehicle. I really had. I got excited when it was teased, but then everything has happened, and it's like the last thing on my mind is this airboat, this vehicle that the lady from, I can't remember the name of the nation based on Japan, Azumbito, I think is her name. But I'd totally forgotten about it, but now it's sounding cool because they're all going to climb in this helicopter like a bunch of commandos. And at least from what Armin and Mikasa tell us, they're going to try to fly up to meet Eren and talk to him in this founding Titan form where he looks like whalebones floating in the sky, which is going to look awesome. I think we're going to see them attempt to do that. I can't wait to see what it looks like. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be great in my opinion. But first, they've got to actually get that skyship, that what I like to call a helicopter. Will they be able to do it? It's going to be complicated. It's going to be fun, but we've only got 3 episodes left, so they're either going to do it or not pretty quickly. Now, we got a revelation about Yelena, or Yelena. I go back and forth with that name. But the revelation here about her is that she's actually Marleyan. And I didn't suspect that for a moment. I mean, she said she's from a country that was conquered by Marley, or annexed, I think is the term that they use, by Marley, and she hates Marley because they have suppressed her home nation. But then we find out she's actually Marleyan. And I wonder why. I'm really wondering what Isayama has to say about this situation by letting us see more about Yelena here. I think maybe it's to tell us you can't judge all Marleyans the same. I think Magath is sort of a little bit of an outlier in Marley. Also, Yelena, very much an outlier, or did she just fall for Zeke's charisma? I feel like there's still something significant to be done by Yelena, something significant to be said by Yelena, because if she didn't have any part left to play in the story, well, Isayama had an appropriate opportunity to kill her off, could have had Flock execute her, she could have died in the rumbling. If she doesn't have a purpose, she could have been killed off or left behind. The fact that she's still here, he's saying something with her, I'm just not sure what yet. I'd love to hear what you think he's saying with Yelena. And then also, I don't understand, not only what does she have left, but what is the significance of someone who's actually Marleyan, claiming not to be Marleyan. But she plays a big part here at the stew pot, right? Because as everybody is pointing fingers back at each other, she's almost a neutral party. She's like a Jaegerist Marleyan, which I guess she's the only Jaegerist Marleyan, but she was the Zeke version of a Jaegerist, not necessarily an Eren version. She was buying into Zeke's euthanization plan, at least that's what we're led to believe. But I guess that's the closest thing we get to a disinterested party. How about that? Maybe not neutral, but disinterested. And she is there to point out to everybody that no one here is free of blame, the kind of you without sin throw the first stone, if you live in glass houses, don't throw rocks, that kind of thing. And she does point out what everybody's done. Now, I'm going to say they're not all equally bad, but everybody has something that they need to put behind them. How about that? Instead of saying everybody has blame, everybody has something that the others need to put behind them about that person. They all have to understand we're not going to get anywhere by pointing fingers and arguing and fighting. And she's a person who's not even dedicated to the cause, and she speaks the reasoning that I think helps to the catharsis that hopefully helps this stew finish cooking and go from separate ingredients to one succulent, delicious dish. And of course, Marco, All the way back in season 1, Marco met his demise, but he's been the mysterious death that, once we found out how it happened, becomes this incredible ghost. This specter is the term I like to use. The specter that's been hanging over both the warriors and the scouts, both the cadets and Reiner and Annie and Bertolt, because of the way that his situation unfolded. And here, so close to the end of the story, a character who exited so close to the beginning of the story is still just hanging over like a storm cloud when you're at a picnic, like you're just hoping it doesn't rain down at any moment. Really nice. It's either really nice type forethought in storytelling, well thought out, well scripted storytelling, or it's a beautiful accident. Either way, I'm loving it, and I like how Marco keeps hanging over the situation years later, and it's one thing that kind of unites everyone in distrust. Everyone feels bad about what happened to Marco, even the people who did it to him, except maybe Annie. Annie seems pretty cold, doesn't she? And Marco is definitely not the only specter hanging over the group here, because Hanji has her group of specters. She thinks about all the scouts that she's lost along the way, and she thinks of Erwin, who's been lost along the way, and she has this lineup behind her. We see people like Anka, Petra, of course we see Erwin there, we see all these faces that maybe we haven't thought about in a while. I think Blonde Elvis is back there somewhere. And when I see her with her specters, what I'll call the burden of leadership weighing down on her in the form of all these ghosts, it seems to me like a very intentional callback to Erwin's Mountain of Corpses scene, which was one of my favorite scenes in the show. I love that Mountain of Corpses internal monologue and the images that went up on screen. One of my favorite frames of all time. I need a poster of Erwin in front of his Mountain of Corpses. But here we get to see Hanji's own army of specters, her own regiment of dead scouts, with, of course, Erwin standing front and center, hanging over her, looking over her shoulder, as if he's judging her ability to lead and to handle this situation. Now, I don't think Erwin really is, but that's her perception of Erwin's specter, which is what really matters in a situation like this, because I don't really believe in ghosts. Sorry, ghosts. Don't mean to offend you if you're listening. And, of course, with the thoughts of Marco and the memories of Marco, well, Reiner shares his last words, and his last words were, "We haven't even talked this out," or "We haven't even thought this out," something along those lines. It was in that, "We haven't even talked this out." It was in that opening comment that I started the review off with. And that is the theme of this show. I like that gets pulled out here in the memory of Marco. There seem to be more dead people than live people around this stew pot at this point, with Hanji specters, with the ghost of Marco, with other thoughts there going through people's minds. And it points front and center the whole reason that this conflict is here. The whole reason we're having a rumbling is because we haven't talked this out. This is something that leaders of nations could take to heart. This is something people and families could take to heart. This is something you and your friends can take to heart. You and strangers can take to heart. One person in one situation can think, hey, let's take time to talk this out. You know, that's what Isayama wants us to understand, right? So I love the way they're communicating it here, with Marco secretly delivering the message of the show. The message of the story, the message of the manga comes courtesy of someone who died very early on. Beautiful there. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the circle that they sit in. And I already mentioned that it's off-center and it's eccentric, or eccentric, asymmetrical. And people need to move towards the center. I feel like that fire needs to move towards the center, because the way that it's off-center, we have some people sitting closer to the light, some people further away from the light in the shadows, some people getting the warmth of the community, some people feeling frigid and frozen out. And I tried to look closely at the seating arrangement, and of course Hanji is closest to the fire because she's making the stew. But also, I think visually, is the story telling us that she is the light to lead the way here? I mean, the way she's so close to the fire, and next to her, we've got Magath, and I think it's Jean on the other side of her. The three leaders are closest to the fire. They're the light. Are we going to pick which one of those three to follow? Do we have Magath a little bit to one side of the issue? Do we have Jean a little bit to the other, and it's Hanji that's going right down the center? So that's who we need to focus on. And then who are the people in the shadows? A little bit closer to the light is Reiner. A little bit further away, well, it looks to me like that's where we start to get people like Armin and Mikasa and Connie. So they're in the shadows. We still maybe don't know which direction they're going to go. but we got to follow the light. We got to stick with Hanji. We got to see if we can close that circle around so that light is in the center and everybody's going in the same direction. I do love this seating arrangement. It looks nice. The image looks nice, but I also think that it's got more to say than just being a pretty picture. And then, of course, we have a major cathartic moment. We have what I call Jean's cathartic beating of Reiner. And first off, it's not just cathartic for Jean. I think it's cathartic for Reiner too, which you would say, wow, what a strange way to get a catharsis to be beaten on. But Reiner doesn't fight back. Like, he feels like he deserves this beating. He takes the beating like a champ. Also, we're sitting here saying we don't take time to talk this through. It's a cycle of hatred. Who's going to break the cycle? I think Reiner just broke the cycle between him and Jean. He didn't fight back. He didn't try to get revenge. He didn't turn into the Armored Titan. He didn't ask for his friends to jump Jean from behind. He took the beating and let it be. And I think there's something very cathartic for Jean, getting it out of his system so now they can move forward, clearing the air, getting their bad ill will out. But there's something for Reiner saying, I'm going to take the beating. I'm going to be the one to suffer the punishment so that we can move on. I will carry this pain to help this group come together. And he didn't fight back. He took it. It was great. I loved it. I mean, I didn't love seeing Reiner get beaten that badly, but I think if Reiner fights back, he looks stronger than Jean to me, and he's a Titan shifter. Jean's not. So he, I think, chose to take that beating. But of course, the thing that really moves your heart when that cathartic beating is going on is Gabi jumping in the way, trying to protect Reiner, trying to protect this fellowship of the off-centered ring, if you want to call it that. She takes a pretty rough kick to the torso. She cries for forgiveness. She begs the people she used to hate to help her. Come on, this is Gabi's final step in her redemption. Somebody told me after this episode they really think that the Gabi gang is going to grow. You know, I've slowly been inching my way towards being in the Gabi gang. I hope the Gabi gang does grow. I hope some of the people that say they hate Gabi and they will never forgive Gabi for what she did, they start to see maybe there's more to this girl. She was young, she was misled, she was influenced by bad influences, and she's starting to see the world for real now. She seems to understand that they need help and the importance of this fellowship. She, who seemed to have the most hate in her, outside of maybe Aaron, when Aaron was younger, has been able to put that aside and ask for help. So she, you know, out of the mouths of babes, one of the youngest people in the group, is perhaps giving the wisdom to say, look, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and please help me. And that's what everyone needs to say to everyone else. Everyone has something to be sorry about. Everyone needs forgiveness. Everyone needs help. Not just in cartoons, but in real life too. And I gotta say, between the catharsis of the beating that Jean gives Reiner, plus Gabi's redemption and her realization that it's a two-part method to unify this, which is to ask for forgiveness and to ask for help, and to admit you need the others, for the others to admit they need you, and to say let bygones be bygones. Well, it seems to work. They get up the next morning, and Jean is ready to shake Reiner's hand and said, let's get to work. We got job to do. This rumbling ain't going to stop itself, so regulators, mount up. Of course, there's always got to be a monkey wrench in the plan at the end. I don't know what to make of this, but we know that Flock has the emissary Azumabito, the lady. The lady's being held hostage by Flock. Honestly, if I'm part of the legion of Attack on Titaners here, if I'm part of the Attack on Avengers on Titan here, I don't know that I care about that lady. I'm sorry, I hate to be cold, but just let Flock keep her. I guess she must have the keys to the helicopter, though, so they'll probably have to get her to get the keys to the helicopter or something like that, because I don't know that she is a priority right now, but the way that they have it framed with Flock behind her with the gun basically to her head, they need to get this airship, they need to get to the port. I guess we're going to have to see a battle, and you know, this could be the battle that forges this would-be team of Attack on Avengers or Avengers on Titan or whatever you want to call them. This league could be put together by going through battle together, being on the battlefield, battle-tested, learning they can rely on each other. This battle against Flock and the Jaegerists to get the helicopter and maybe rescue the emissary. This could be what they need for the final step to coming together and being a team today. I hope I didn't go too far off on my assessment of this episode. I loved it. This is one of my favorite of the last few episodes. I love a really gripping, psychological, emotional episode like this that has a lot to say, and it goes way beyond the action and a whole lot to do with the thought process. This is one that is really well written. well animated, some great artistic choices. And with that, I just want to say I'm proud of you for watching anime, and I'll talk to you again soon.
I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon. It really means a lot to me. If you might be interested in Patreon perks like early access to videos, uncut reaction videos, ad-free videos, and the opportunity to vote on which anime will be covered in the future, then click on the link in the video description. Thank you.